Hello everyone, how are you today? I am Makeda Valletta, also known as the Renaissance Amazon and the Body Scientist. Right now I am live on my IG page. Why is my nose itching right now? I'm live on my IG page, but I will save it and repost it to my YouTube page. Okay, so make sure you follow me in both places. I'm sorry, my nose is itching me as soon as I start this video. Okay. So, hi everybody. So, to those of you who follow me, you may or may not be familiar with my work. So, I am a sports nutritionist, an exercise physiologist. I have a very strong background in in health science, and I've committed my life to studying all the ways that we could take our body to its highest level, right? And that's the reason why I work for myself, because I realized when I was in graduate school, I'm sorry, my nose is itching. When I was in graduate school, I became aware of a lot of things, because the graduate program I was in was the only program in the country that didn't take money from the food industry. So people talk a lot about the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies, but the nutrition students in this country are funded by the food companies, okay? And the food and the drug companies are the same people. They're the same people, okay? And so my background being in nutrition, I can tell you, with this whole COVID situation, this is already a nation of very unhealthy people. And it's not just the US. All over the world, you have a lot of unhealthy nations and unhealthy people because of what's being done to the food. And what's being done to the food is not just in the US, okay? There's a lot of also healthy eating propaganda. A lot of you may not follow my videos, especially on my other page, The Body Scientist, where I speak more in depth about the food system and all of the issues and all of the trickery, okay? This is what I do. I educate people. And I educate my clients, and I educate those who follow me on social media so they can understand how to evaluate food, how to know what they're eating, how to know what you need, how to decipher through a lot of the propaganda, okay? A lot of what I do when I work with clients is educate them, because the average person has no idea, what's going on with the food or what it is, and people are shocked. Almost every person that I know that says that they eat healthy, when I actually analyze what they're eating, totally disagree, right? So today, I just wanted to talk about this COVID thing. I had to give that background because some of you love to watch me dance and stuff, but you really don't listen to me speak, and you don't know what I do, okay? So I dance, I work out. Those are also things that I do to keep my body in tip-top shape, okay? So there's a lot of things that I do to maintain my health, because like I said, I have committed my life to studying all the ways we could take our body to its highest level. And one of my huge interests was infectious disease. Ever since the 90s, I was very interested in infectious disease and genetic diseases, okay? And I used to want to be a scientist, and I wanted to research cures for genetic diseases. That's what I had an interest in at first. So reading all these nerdy science books and studies and analyzing them is something I've always done and something I always will do. But because a lot of people don't have scientific literacy, it's very easy to brainwash people, okay? It's very easy to brainwash people. Just like, there's people who don't have financial literacy, and they do all these things that is wrong, and they could have had way more money, they could have had, but they don't understand the system. And if somebody who's really experienced in that is listening to people give bad advice to somebody, you would be like, that's all wrong. And so that's how I feel not just as a healthcare practitioner, but one who has not been educated by these companies, okay? So most of the doctors you come in contact with, and most of the dietitians, nutritionists you come in contact with, they've been educated by the food companies and the drug companies. The food companies and the drug companies give more money to politicians than any other industry, okay? And really they're the same people. But the food companies are even more powerful than the drug companies. There's actually I have a bunch of books that I'm going to show in this video. And one of the books, I'm like, I don't even happen around me. But so in this conversation, I've had other conversations about this C virus. I'm not gonna say it because I'm not trying to have my YouTube video deleted. I had, the last YouTube video I made about this was deleted, but it's on my Instagram. So I've been keeping my ear to the street and seeing, listening to a lot of conversations and deciphering the facts, and so I really want to talk about that, okay? And also arm you with some books and things that you can look at so you can further your research and dig deeper and not just listen to what's being on the news, because remember, the pharmaceutical companies and the food companies fund the news, the media, okay? Everybody who you see has a commercial when you're watching the news, they're giving money to that station, to that organization. And just like scientists, the media cannot go against their funders. And scientists can't either, okay? So that's why there's a lot of politics in science, okay? A lot of politics in science. First book that talks about that, Science for Sale, okay? I have a whole YouTube video on my page, The Body Scientist 81, where I talk about science for sale, okay? This book is written by a scientist. Science for Sale, How the U.S. Government Uses Powerful Corporations and Leading Universities to Support Government Policies, Silence Top Scientists, Jeopardize Our Health, and Protect Corporate Profits. You see? You could order it on Amazon. This is what I'm talking about. And he's talking a lot about the EPA, okay? But all these organizations, the USDA, the FDA, the ADA, the AMA, the AHA, they're all full of it, okay? Now, so it's crazy because, this vaccine mandate, so just so you know about myself, I'm not with the mask, I'm not with the vaccines. Now, if somebody chooses to wear a mask, more power to you. If you want to get the vaccine, I could say more power to you, except one thing that hasn't been spoken about enough is that people who have been vaccinated are shedding fragments that are affecting the reproductive systems of women. So there are a lot of women that have had miscarriages, who have been bleeding when their period wasn't due, or who went through menopause and started bleeding after they've already been through menopause, or have passed like the inner lining of their uterus. So it's causing issues with women's reproductive systems, okay? Of course, that's not talked about enough, but I've heard a lot of midwives and birth workers speaking about this, okay? So actually, people who are vaccinated can affect people who are unvaccinated in a negative way. In science, there's always been a healthy debate, okay? So that's one thing that should raise a red flag with you, is that the only thing that we're seeing on the news is one perspective. There are many scientists, okay, and healthcare professionals who don't agree with the vaccine. First of all, right now is a time that they are absolutely ignoring natural immunity, okay? This is a biological, microbiological, scientific fact that has been known for a long time, okay? That when you naturally get infected with something and overcome it, that your immune system is able to protect you in a broader spectrum against the variations of the virus or bacteria. Right now, there's so many things in my head that I want to say. As I'm speaking to you, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to say this. Oh yeah, I want to say that. Oh yeah, I want to say this. And I'm trying to make sure I say everything. And I should have had a pen so I could write down certain things coming up in my mind so I don't forget. Hold on a second. Darn it. I might have to get up and go get a pen. I don't want to get up from here. Try not to get up. Hold on, let me see. I have so many pens and I don't have any of them by me right now. Okay, for now, I'm going to try to remember what I need to say. Okay. Let me get I have so many things in my head going on. Okay. So it's a known, natural immunity is something that's been known, but that's being ignored right now, okay? That's being ignored. That's the reason why you have nurses. You have nurses who are there in the front lines, who don't want the vaccine. And the media will try to point it out in crazy ass Biden trying to make it seem like anybody who doesn't want to be vaccinated is so, doesn't care about their neighbor, and that they're so irresponsible. But you have people who are on the front lines who got COVID. Some of them got it more than once. Okay, some of them got sick more than once. And how do you ignore the fact that they have actually overcome it? And so when this fear mongering is used as, people act like getting COVID is a death sentence when less than 1% of people have died from it. And the fact of the matter is, most of the people who have died from it, they died because the hospital didn't treat them, okay? There were medications that could be used early on, like hydroxychloroquine, because they wanted to politicize everything and be so anti-Trump. And I'm going to admit, I was not a fan of Trump. I might have some different thoughts right now. But just because I wasn't a fan of certain things about him, like I'm not somebody that, just because I don't agree with certain things you do, I'm not going to just disagree with everything you do. Like some things, I might agree with. You know what I'm saying? Like Candace Owens. Some things I don't agree with, some things I do. And if you're somebody who I'm a fan of, I'm not going to ride with you. If you're wrong, right? I'm that type of person. So when it came to Trump, I never had an issue with the way that he dealt with the virus. Because first of all, a person can't stop a virus from spreading, all right? A virus is a microorganism, it's some shit that we can't see, okay? We cannot see bacteria and we cannot see viruses. So it's crazy to think that humans can stop it. It's going to travel. This is the reason why it is so important to take, it is our responsibility. It is your responsibility to make sure that your immune system is up. We all have our own universe, okay? That starts with our skin. Our skin is a part of our immune system, okay? We have our own micro ecosystem. Just because you get exposed with an infectious disease doesn't mean you have to get infected with it. I've been talking about this for years. People who have been following me for 10 plus years, you've been hearing me talk about it. You've been hearing me talk about how important probiotics is, how important it is to maintain your microbiome. I would rather not wash my hands than to use antibacterial soap. So somebody asked me about ivermectin. So yeah, ivermectin has shown to have a lot of efficiency. Also hydroxychloroquine, which I wanted to show this book, right? This book is called the Hydroxychloroquine Debate. Hydrochloroquine debate, right? What did researchers hide about the hydroxychloroquine COVID-19 clinical trials? This is also written by a medical doctor named Dr. Caxton Perry. He's actually on Instagram. I would like to get him on to interview him because I've listened to him speak for hours on Clubhouse. He is very well researched. He is a frontline doctor, okay? Because here's another book that he wrote. COVID-19 Remedies, A Frontline Doctor's View. Okay, he wrote both of these books. You can find them both on Amazon. He's written a few books. One of them was Silenced. Now, this doctor was on the front lines, okay, with COVID patients. He absolutely will not get the vaccine, okay? He speaks in depth about it, and he speaks in depth about how Fauci needs to be in jail, which he does. Because if you actually look at the facts and connect to this gain of function research that he's involved in and how he's connected to all this stuff, you can just follow the money, okay? I have this other book posted on my Instagram page. If you follow me on Instagram, you look at the books that I post, you'll see a lot of these books, okay? This other book, Corona False Alarm, written by two very experienced scientists and virologists, okay? So I'm just going to read to you what the back of this book says, right? And in this book, they also are against not only just the corona vaccine, vaccines in general can be are a problem, okay? Vaccines in general are a problem, and I'm going to get into that in a second. Hold on. Okay, so this book is a very good book. Also can be found on Amazon. I got this book months ago. Okay? This book on the back, it says, some nurse said that if they gave their patients ivermectin and zinc, the people with COVID started getting better. You said when they give. I think you meant when they give. So the thing is, well, hydroxychloroquine and zinc, okay, have shown to be very effective. Hydroxychloroquine needs to be given in the early stages. In this book, he goes through the research, okay? He goes through the research on hydroxychloroquine, dissects it, and that's something I've always told people. quote scientific studies, the media quote scientific studies, never read it. A lot of people quote scientific studies that they never read, that's poorly designed. You have to analyze scientific studies. That's how scientists are trained. That's what peer review means. You analyze, you critique the studies, you critique the flaws in the studies. This is why I've never been a vegan and never will be. Because way back when, in 2004, when I was in graduate school, I had access to all the studies that people, all these vegan studies that claim that vegans live longer. I analyzed all that, and those studies don't say that. Studies do not say that, okay? And I have so many clients who've messed themselves up doing that. Now, it's important to go through the research and analyze it. If you do not have a background in science, you won't understand the studies really. I mean, you could try, but you won't really understand the studies. So reading books by people who actually go through the research and dissect it is really good, okay? And just remember that most doctors have ulterior motive because they're being funded. They've been educated by the drug companies. A lot of times they're being funded by them. Even when they have good intentions, they don't know any better, okay? Now, and so, you know, Dr. Caxton Perry is a board-certified internist with over 30 years of clinical experience in hospital medicine, emergency medicine, and critical care. He is on the front lines as a COVID-19 expert, treating critically ill COVID-19 patients in COVID units, emergency rooms, and hospitals, and helping find solutions to the current pandemic in the United States. He's an excellent teacher and speaker, but, you know, so the thing is that he is. And if you are on, wait, hold on. So when somebody says that they see people that they know who've been healthy and died from COVID, I made a video last year talking about that. I don't believe healthy people are getting sick and dying from COVID, not dying from it, okay? Now, it's quite possible that the person may not feel good, go to the hospital, and the hospital killed them because they put them on a ventilator, which we know is a death sentence, okay? There's so many issues with throwing people on the ventilators. And that's what they were doing last year, throwing people on the ventilators, not giving them any medicine, and letting them just expire. When in other countries, I don't know if it was Japan, it was some country where they were using vitamin C, intravenous vitamin C. You know, of course, the zinc works in combination with the hydroxychloroquine. And what's the highest source of zinc? Liver, okay? That's something that people are told not to eat. Most people don't eat liver anymore. After that, you have red meat. Some people think red meat is bad for you, okay? Seafood, they're all high in zinc. And so just because you have to have a way to measure what is healthy, okay? Because people think just because somebody wasn't diagnosed with a disease that they're healthy. But no, okay? You could be so deficient in vitamin D. That's not a healthy place to be, especially when it comes to dealing with an infection. Especially an infection that affects the upper respiratory tract infection. Because there's many studies for years that have talked about how people who are vitamin D deficient, you know, their immune systems don't function properly, especially when it comes to dealing with the cytokine storm. Vitamin D modulates that completely, okay? And vitamin D is a worldwide problem when it comes to deficiencies. But people who have more melanin tend to be worse. People who are overweight, worse. And people as they're aging need more vitamin D. Okay, I have videos where I speak more in depth about vitamin D. Even this book, which was written 10 years ago, okay, he speaks a lot about vitamin D. This book was written 10 years ago, Vaccine Nation. Poisoning the population one shot at a time. This is a very good book. And this book is written by a man who both of his parents were medical doctors, okay? And he was never given any vaccines in his life because you know what? They are all a problem. All of them, not just the COVID. People say, oh, well, we took this vaccine and didn't know it was in it. A lot of people are sick right now. A lot of people have various autoimmune issues like vitiligo and Crohn's disease and Graves' disease and what else? Why am I going blank with the autoimmune disease? There's so many autoimmune diseases. I'm just like going blank, but they're very much linked to to vaccines. Okay, vaccines are very much linked to causing other health problems later in life. And so just to read something about that out of this book, talking about how many vaccines kids are given now. Because when you were born in the early 80s, you know, you weren't given that many vaccines. So I'm going to read this. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm going to start here. I'm going to read this little excerpt. You can get this book. So, many people argue. Okay, I'm gonna read about 2 pages real quick. Okay, just to give you a little bit of something. All right. So, in this scenario where the immune system has successfully restored the body's functions, the body is healthier and stronger than before. This bestows what many call acquired immunity, but doesn't necessarily involve immunity against specific germs. It may just as well mean the body is now healthy and free of toxins, and hence there is no further need for germs to evoke the body's cleansing and healing responses. So this book is talking about how viruses actually are not the cause of disease. They actually help to clear up disease states. So this book talks about this, as does, where's my other book? Hold on a minute. I brought so many books over here. There's another book that also talks about, where did I put it? I have the stack of books and some of them are over here. So there's another book that I have. Oh, here it is. The Truth About Contagion. Exploring theories of how diseases spread. This is written by a medical doctor named Thomas Cohen. Okay? Thomas Cohen also wrote this book, Vaccines, Autoimmunity, and the Changing Nature of Childhood Illnesses. Okay? I have a video where I speak about this because he very well explains how vaccines are leading to autoimmune diseases. And the kids now are getting way too many of them. So also in this book, he talks about, you know, viruses aren't what we think. In this book, he's saying the same thing, okay? So back to what I was reading. Vaccine science has pursued the question of how we can bring about lifelong immunity to an infectious inflammatory illness without having to experience the illness first. The assumption is that by evoking production of antibodies to combat certain illness-causing germs, you are automatically protected against them. However, modern medicine has not been able to prove whether protection from the germs is due to the presence of antibodies or to a naturally healthy immune response, which is primarily intended to purify and heal the congested, damaged tissues. It is actually much more likely that the latter is true, unless vaccine poisons have damaged or even paralyzed the immune system. The current germ theory suggests that only when the number of germs or their rate of growth exceeds a certain threshold are they then recognized by the immune system, resulting in the formation of antibodies specific to the particular microbe. Or could there be another explanation to why antibodies are produced? Now this gets to the good part. This is the background. A large presence of germs indicates that the cell tissue has become damaged or weak due to the accumulation of acid waste or another kind of injury. At that level of infection, things begin to spin seriously out of control, and a tribe of germs proliferates wildly and provokes the full healing force of our immune system. This is what doctors call an acute inflammatory response. Symptoms usually include fever, release of stress hormones by the adrenal glands, increased flow of blood, lymph and mucus, and a streaming of white blood cells, called lymphocytes, to the inflamed area. The afflicted person feels sick and may experience pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and chills. Now, listen to what I'm about to read, okay? This is what the stats on these childhood vaccines and the damages that they're doing to kids, okay? The sweating out and throwing off of the illness is a natural response by the body that reflects a healthy immune system. In other words, the illness actually shows that the body is capable of successfully dealing with an unhealthy condition. This mandates that the illness is allowed and supported, not suppressed and aggravated. A really sick person would no longer be able to produce such healing responses. Once we have successfully passed the challenge of a particular illness, it is less likely that we will experience it again. Somehow, the illness and our response to it have made us immune to its reoccurrence. It is highly doubtful that vaccination can do the same for us. But wait a minute, am I reading the wrong part? I'm reading the wrong damn part. I'm sorry. Let me just get to, okay, I'm sorry. I went back too far. So this is what I wanted to tell you, okay? This is what the thing about the kids, okay? So it says, the other thing parents are not being told is that the viruses, bacteria, fungi, and chemical toxins in one single vaccination force the immune system to respond and make antibodies that can cause genetic switches, okay? That can cause genetic switches to be turned on and off. In the case of a developing child, this may lead to irreparable damage to the mind and or body of that child, okay? In the United States, a child receives 36 vaccinations before age 5. Now, this is written 10 years ago. It might be more than 36 now, okay? 36 vaccinations before the age of 5. And one child in 91 develops autism. 8 deaths per 1,000 in children below 5 years of age are due to vaccinations. In comparison, in Iceland, a child receives 11 vaccine shots while only one child in 11,000 develops autism. And only 4 children per 1,000 die as a result of being vaccinated. In 1980, a child received 8 vaccinations and autism was rare. Today, Iceland ranks at number 1 in the world with respect to lifespan, and the United States ranks at number 34. You can do the math and draw your own conclusions. More about the vaccine autism link later. So I'm not going to read more of this. You can get this book. That's why your 3-year-old child is absolutely unvaccinated. Yes, it is serious. So when people, I was born in 81, okay, there was 8 vaccinations. I don't even think we got 8 vaccinations, but that's what it says, right? And so people who are born in the 80s and the 70s, are like, or before that, they're like, oh, we took vaccines and we're fine. Yeah, but let me tell you, you don't know that some of the health problems that you have aren't from some of those vaccines, okay? Because as a healthcare practitioner, I work with people in depth. A lot of people have a lot of problems, okay, going on. They might look fine and healthy, but they got all these, I got digestive problems, they got allergies, they got this, they got that. A lot of people got issues. And sometimes it's from the food, sometimes it's from the vaccines that you were given, okay? Now, this said that 1 in 91 kids develop autism in the U.S. and 8 deaths per 1,000, and children below 5 years of age are due to vaccinations. Now, CNN just posted something today. You asked me what some things you can do to build up your immune system. I made videos about that, so I'm not going to talk about that here. If you go to my YouTube page, The Body Scientist 81, I made videos over a year ago, and even prior to COVID, about how you can build up your immune system, okay? But this says 8 in 1,000 children in the U.S. die from vaccinations. Today, CNN posted something that said 1 in 500 Americans is dying from COVID. So 8 in 1,000 children dying from vaccines, that's 4 in 500. So that number is greater than the amount of people dying from COVID, okay? And that's just what's been reported. Because a lot of kids who are vaccine injured, that's not even reported. The medical community won't even admit that this kid has problems because of this vaccine. I've listened to parents on Clubhouse whose kids have died from vaccines, okay? So the same way you can say, oh, well, I'm fine, or my kids are fine, well, we can say the same thing about COVID. I know mad people that got COVID. Nobody died from it. I don't know one person that died from COVID. I know mad people that got COVID, they were sick for a day, they were okay. They were sick for a week, they were okay. Mad people. So the same way people can make an argument on the other end, we can make it on ours. So for people who think that everybody should be vaccinated and you don't care that some people's doctors have said to them, some people's doctors have said that you shouldn't get vaccinated because you have serious like autoimmune issues or other health issues. And the fact that none of that matters, the fact that if you think that there's no excuse, that there's no reason at all that somebody should have an exemption, you're an asshole, okay? Because you can't say that. You can't say you don't care what happens to somebody who's taking this, right? But then you're using this sob story about COVID because there's a lot of people who don't know nobody has been killed by COVID, okay? So you could get COVID naturally and get really, really sick and die. You can get the vaccine and get really, really sick and die. And the fact of the matter is, as many people that they say died from COVID wouldn't have died if the hospital would have treated them. And then there's a lot of COVID deaths were marked down as COVID deaths that weren't even COVID deaths, okay? In this book, hold on a minute. In this book, he goes in depth about that. And not just him, so do they in this book, about how the rules were changed, about how to even mark down COVID deaths, okay? And how people were getting, if they died in a car accident, but they had COVID was being noted as their cause of death. That happened with George Floyd, okay? It said he was marked down as a COVID death. We know he didn't die from COVID, but because he had COVID when he died, they counted that as a COVID death, okay? So there's a lot of politics with that. This book speaks a lot about this. Dr. McCullough, they try to call him a fraud. I've been following Dr. McCullough for like 20 years. He's a medical doctor from Chicago, okay? How's he gonna be a quack? He's old. He's been a doctor for a long time. You're trying to call him that. And for 20 years plus, he's been giving people advice on how to take control over their health. He wrote this book with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., okay, from the Kennedy family. Now, both of them are just lying and writing a book about the truth about COVID-19, exposing the Great Reset, lockdowns, vaccine passports, and a new normal. This book explains a lot of it in depth too. Goes through every question you could have. Very good book, could also find on Amazon. So it's good to know that in the UK recently deaded that, okay, vaccine passport. They deaded it as of I think yesterday. So that gives me hope, okay? And it gives me hope that my hometown of New York City, when they decided to implement that vaccine passport, I thought all the other cities were going to jump on board, especially Chicago and LA and the Bay and DC and the areas that surround New York, like New Jersey, Connecticut. Nobody jumped on that, okay? At the most, you have New Orleans that said negative COVID test or vaccine. New York is not giving you the option to even have a negative COVID test. And both of those are flawed because the tests are flawed, okay? There's a lot of people speaking about that. There's a lot of false negatives, false positives. The tests are flawed. But if you have so much belief in the test will make more sense than the vaccine because we know vaccinated people can still get COVID. There's so many breakthrough cases. There's so many cases of people that took the vaccine and are now sick in the hospital with COVID. But in the news, they keep telling you it's the unvaccinated. That's bullshit, okay? Back in April, I was talking to an EMS worker in New York, and he told me he had not seen a legit COVID case in 6 or 7 months. But what he had seen was people who took the vaccine who were being taken to the hospital because of being sick and having side effects, okay? If it was the unvaccinated, if it was really the unvaccinated that's filling up these hospitals, why do you have so many nurses and doctors who don't want to take it? Why, like here, in Chicago, I had a client whose mother had to get a double lung transplant, and his mother, they told his mother they weren't going to operate on her unless she was vaccinated. It was totally against her religion. Told her, nope, got to be vaccinated. Told him and his siblings, you want to be around your mother, you have to get vaccinated. They were forced. When we know that these vaccinations don't even work against the Delta variant, okay? Not giving people any of the opportunity to take an antibody test, even though it's debatable if antibodies are even what really protects you. And you have T cell. There's 2 layers to your immune system. I explained that in another video that I did. I won't get into that right now. But when you take a vaccine, it skips the most primal part of our immune system. And it overstimulates the antibody producing part of the immune system, which is one of the reasons why the increase of vaccines will link to the increase of autoimmune diseases. They can definitely cause autoimmune diseases. Autoimmune diseases are an overactive immune system. They can definitely become overactive from vaccines, okay? And you don't have that T cell natural immunity. That's the reason why getting sick naturally protects you more than a vaccine. Also, the vaccine, most doctors and nurses actually favor taking the vaccine. Can you explain why states are so overwhelmed? So let me say this. Most doctors and nurses are in favor of it because most doctors and nurses don't read research, okay? They don't. And this is a fact. They're not scientists. They are not scientists. Let me repeat. Doctors and nurses, when they go to school, they are indoctrinated, okay? First of all, they don't teach them how to get the body back to balance. Everything that they teach them, what they teach doctors is, these are the symptoms that you have to have that to diagnose this disease. When they diagnose something, there's a bunch of lab results or symptoms that they have that you meet these criteria, you get this diagnosis. Now, based on this diagnosis, these are the approved treatments, which are all medications, okay? All medications. And that's what they're indoctrinated with. When you're going to medical school, they don't have time to think for themselves or read other research. They're memorizing all this information so they can regurgitate it back. Then they go to residency, which then just teaches them your haze, and you have to follow the order of what's being told to you. They can't buck against the system. Anytime you see doctors speak up, they're always way older. They're not in their early years. They can't do that. It's like a fraternity. So most of them are indoctrinated. Most of them are busy, okay? Most doctors and nurses are overworked, and they don't have time or the desire to read extra research. They don't, okay? So that's number one. Number two, so you have to ask yourself, the ones who are not wanting to do it, like upstate New York, you had a whole hospital that couldn't deliver any babies. They couldn't deliver any babies because the nurses left. So what the question should be is, why are they so against it? Why is this medical doctor who's been one for 30 years on the front line writing books like this? Okay? Why? Because that's not going to be in their benefit. The people that speak up, they get called crazy, they get called quacks, they might lose money, they might lose their job. So you really got to ask yourself, the people who are speaking up, why would they be speaking up? We know why most doctors and nurses go along with it. People about that money, they want that money. They don't want to lose their job and lose their pay in the system that they work for. So, I mean, that's not, just think a little bit critically for a second for once. Secondly, yesterday when I was on Clubhouse, I heard a nurse saying that a lot of nurses are quitting. A lot of nurses are walking out. And she said when they tell you that there's not enough beds, when they tell you in the news that they're running out of beds, she said they count the beds based on the amount of nurses there are to work the beds. So if you have a shortage of nurses that can't work all these beds, they don't count those beds. So just to make up some average number, let's say there's 100 beds. Let's say they only have nurses to tend to 60 of those beds. Those other 40 beds, they're going to say they don't have because they don't have a nurse to work those beds. Okay, so a lot of this bed shortage has to do with the shortage of nurses. Okay, but they're not telling you that in the news. I heard this yesterday from a nurse, and then later on I see, New York can't deliver any more babies. Or this is like 2 days ago. New York can't deliver any more babies because these nurses then walked out because of the vaccine mandate. Nurses really, really care, okay? They really, really care about their patients. So for nurses to walk out in a maternity ward where babies are being born and they can't deliver any babies, that's a pretty big deal. You need to ask yourself those questions. Plus, these healthcare workers, a lot of them already got COVID. So why do they need to take a vaccine? Why are we ignoring natural immunity completely? Okay? Bunch of bullshit. Another thing about this that I was going to read real quick about these vaccinations is that it says it is relatively easy to observe whether vaccines have any negative effect on white blood cells, which form the body's primary immune system. Accordingly, a more recent peer-reviewed study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in May 1996 revealed that tetanus vaccine produces a drop in T cells and thus disables the immune system in HIV patients, okay? Of course, this means the vaccine can damage anyone's immune system, okay? Not just in those whose immune systems has already been compromised. It is anyone's guess what a compromised immune system can lead up to. In 1992, the New Zealand Immunization Awareness Society conducted a survey study to find out how many of its members' children were suffering from health problems. Among other diseases, conditions of an impaired immune system, the vaccinated versus unvaccinated children suffered. Okay, so among other diseases, conditions of an impaired immune system, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated children suffered. Okay, now I'm going to read this list. 5 times more asthma, nearly 3 times more allergies, over 3 times more ear infections, over 4 times more apnea and near-miss cot death, nearly 4 times more bouts of recurring tonsillitis, 10 times more hyperactivity. I can certainly vouch for these findings. In all the 37 years I have been involved with the natural health field, I have rarely seen unvaccinated children who were also autistic, hyperactive, or suffered from asthma, ear infections, allergies, and tonsillitis. On the other hand, I have witnessed these occurrences among vaccinated children at alarmingly high rates. A study published in Pediatrics, volume March 1998, found that acute encephalopathy, which is like when your brain is swollen, followed by permanent brain injury or death, was associated with measles vaccines. Okay, so brain swelling followed by permanent brain injury or death was associated with measles vaccines. This is published in Pediatrics Journal in 1998. Okay, a total of 48 children ages 10 to 49 met the inclusion criteria after receiving measles vaccines alone or in combination. 8 children died, and the remainder had mental regression and retardation, chronic seizures, motor and sensory deficits, and movement disorders. In September 2010, CNN reported that 9-month-old twins in Ghaziabad, India, died within minutes of receiving a measles vaccine. Imagine that. Imagine if you had twins, okay? Not just one baby. You carried and gave birth to 2 babies. Take them to get vaccinated for them both to die? What the fuck? Like, Avika and Anika Sharma were given the vaccinations at a private nursing home by Dr. Sativir Singh. Within about 15 minutes, both little girls were dead. The Indian Medical Association's local president, who visited the hospital after the incident, confirmed that the health of the twins deteriorated after being administered the vaccine. He said, quote, "The doctor had a fresh supply of the vaccine. Still, there could be something wrong with the batch of vaccines. Similar deaths have been reported from Kanpur and Lucknow." He added, when asked for comment, investigators said, quote, "This is a case of adverse event following immunization. This is not a new phenomenon. This is not a new phenomenon." Okay, I'm not going to keep reading. You can get this book. Okay? So wake up. And don't ask questions like, well, why are most of the doctors and nurses for it? Because most people care about their money. And if you've been living a certain lifestyle, most people aren't prepared to just quit their job and go work because they've been working for a system. Like, luckily, I don't depend on any job for my survival. But if you do, and you're making tons of money and you didn't have that entrepreneurial mind, some people got kids to feed. They'd rather look the other way. But I couldn't live with myself doing that. Also, a lot of doctors and nurses don't read no damn research, okay? And that's just a fact. Now, some other books, right? I think I showed you, I don't know if I put this one up. Vaccine Epidemic, okay? How corporate greed, biased science, and coercive government threaten our human rights, our health, and our children. Our children. It's one thing if adults want to take this poison, but when you give it to kids and babies who are developing, they're in the developmental stages. It is absolutely criminal and unfair to do that. Because if it messes them up permanently, they have the rest of their life to live with these problems. If it messes up their fertility, they have the rest of their life to live with these problems. And this whole situation of kids not going to school or having masks on, that people don't think, I do think that the younger generation, like people in their early 20s, I do think they're a little weak, okay? I do think they're overly sensitive about every damn thing. People who are that age may not see it, but older people see it. Like, they're definitely more sensitive. So if people think that they're like little baby sensitive, what do you think is going to happen to these kids who walking around with a mask on all the time is being normalized? Like, how is that okay? When your facial expressions tell you a lot about a person. So how are you a kid and you're not seeing faces and it's being normalized to like be afraid of people? We're humans, we're social creatures, so we're supposed to be afraid of everybody, we're supposed to wear a mask for the rest of our lives. First of all, when in the history of vaccines have they ever said you have to take a vaccine and keep wearing a mask? So we're supposed to wear a mask forever? How does that make any damn sense? To me, the masks are symbolic of shut up, we don't want to hear what you got to say. Now, there's this book, Dissolving Illusions. Disease, Vaccine, and Forgotten History, okay? Look out, this book is like 400 pages. This book is like 400 pages, okay? These ain't no short books, and they're full of research and facts. It's time for some of you to do research and stop asking silly questions. Read the books. Be quiet for a minute. do some unbiased research. When I was in the 7th grade and I was in the debate team, they told us, research the opinions of your opponents. So this book, what it says in the back, not too long ago, lethal infections were feared in the Western world. Since that time, many countries have undergone a transformation from disease cesspools to much safer, healthier habitats. Starting in the mid-1800s, there was a steady drop in deaths from all infectious diseases, decreasing to relatively minor levels by the early 1900s. The history of that transformation involves famine, poverty, filth, lost cures, eugenicist doctrine, individual freedoms versus state protests and arrests over vaccine refusal, and much more. Today, we are told that medical interventions increased our lifespan and single-handedly prevented masses of deaths. But is this really true? Dissolving Illusions details facts and figures from long overlooked medical journals, books, newspapers, and other sources using myth-shattering graphs. This book shows that vaccines, antibiotics, and other medical interventions are not responsible for the increase in lifespan and the decline in mortality from infectious diseases. If the medical profession could systematically misinterpret and ignore key historical information, the question must be asked, what else is ignored and misinterpreted today? Perhaps the best reason to know our history is so that the worst parts are never repeated. Okay? Now, this is written by Dr. Suzanne Humphreys, is a medical doctor, internist, and board-certified nephrologist. She's currently in private practice and continues to dispel the mythology surrounding vaccines. Another person that wrote the book, Roman B., has been researching the history of diseases and vaccines since 1996. He has an extensive background in health and nutrition, as well as a BS in engineering and an MS in computer science. So these people aren't no dummies, okay? Now, Dr. Caxton, the one that wrote, these two books, he speaks about how the vaccinated people are the ones that's causing the variants, not the unvaccinated. Because just like with antibiotics, which I talk about a lot, I have a lot of videos I've been talking about for years about maintaining your microbiome and how important it is to make sure you have good bacteria and not take antibiotics as antibacterial agents, because that is what causes super strains of bacteria. Using those artificial antibacterial agents, it causes the infectious diseases to mutate and become stronger. This has been known since the 90s. And the same is true with viruses. The use of antiviral drugs is causing super strains of viruses. The overuse of antibiotics is causing super strains of bacteria. And if you don't believe me, look it up, because this has been documented since the 90s. So really, the vaccinated people are the ones that are responsible. I mean, viruses and bacteria mutate anyway, but you cause a lot more mutations and a lot more aggressive mutations when you use artificial agents, artificial viral and bacterial agents. Bacteria cannot mutate against natural shit. So there's natural things that kill bacteria, like garlic, like tea tree oil, like oil of oregano, like olive leaf extract, like grapefruit seed extract, okay? Like thyme, rosemary. I mean, there's a lot of things. Probiotics, lauric acid, which is in coconut oil, which also kills lipid-contained viruses, which COVID is. So is HIV, HPV, herpes, they're all lipid-contained viruses. And hydrogen peroxide producing bacteria and lauric acid can certainly kill them, among other things, okay? And this is something I've known for about 20 years now, all right? So then you got this book, The Plague of Corruption, okay? Restoring Faith in the Promise of Science. This person worked under Fauci. She worked under Fauci with HIV/AIDS, and she talks a lot about, actually, the quote, one of the people that reviewed this book said, Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, and Big Pharma don't want you to read this book. Get Plague of Corruption now and learn the truth about public health industrial complexes, decades of research, fraud, and vaccine cover-ups. So, And this scientist has spent 20 years, and this is when the book was written. This book was written a long time ago, so it's probably more than 20 years now. But at the time of this book, she spent 20 years at the National Cancer Institute working with Dr. Frank Ruscati, one of the founding fathers of human retrovirology, and has co-authored more than 40 scientific papers. She co-funded and directed the first Neuroimmune Disease Institute using a systems biology approach in 2006. Dr. Miskovitz lives in Southern California with her husband, David. Okay, so these are all legit people. Okay, it takes a lot for a scientist to speak up. The whole reason why I decided I didn't want to be a scientist anymore is because when I was in graduate school, I saw the politics in it. I saw how scientists get shamed, they get defunded, they get called frauds when they don't go along with the agenda. Okay, and that's all. If you follow me on my Instagram, the Body Scientist 81, all I do is post books like this. Okay, people need to read more. Forget about the news and forget about what you Google, because I say the truth is not in Google, it's in the books. When you read books like these, people go through the research. Okay, they go through the research. I spent a lot of time reading this stuff. This is probably why I never wrote a book yet, because I'm always researching. Medical doctors are not doing that. There are a few that are, and the ones that are know the truth and they speak up. Most of them, they're not reading no research. Okay, now right now, in Chicago, they had a bunch of Chicago school drivers that didn't show up to work. 90 of them quit because of this vaccine mandate. They didn't have anybody to take the kids to school. They're trying to get Ubers. To me, that sounds like a prescription for child sex trafficking. Like, sending kids, it's one thing if a parent wants to send their kid in an Uber one day, but on mass scale, being like, we're going to get Uber drivers to take us to school, doesn't sound like a good idea. Then when my friends told me the same thing happened in Maryland, but he told me that the school bus driver was taking these kids to the wrong place. He was driving them into D.C. The kids were telling them, we don't live over here. The bus driver told the kids to shut up and be quiet and sit down. The kids started writing on paper, please help, on paper, and putting it up against the glass. And the state trooper saw that and pulled the bus over. That's how these kids got saved, okay? The bus driver, and they're not really telling you that in the news. That's a problem, okay? You got nurses. There's already a shortage of nurses. So even if 20% of nurses quit, that's a big problem. And of course, they're going to have a shortage of beds in that situation, okay? When you have nurses quitting, but they're not telling you the truth. You know what I'm saying? Now, some other books that I have posted on my page, but also we're going along with the politics, like I told you, food and drug companies are the same people. I told you the food and drug companies are the same people. This book, Altered Genes, Twisted Truths, this book talks, another 400-page book, okay? They go into depth about all the lies in politics and problems around GMO foods and all the things that people don't know, okay? And this is something that I've been aware of for a long time because I was a biotechnology major before I got into nutrition. So when people became aware of GMO foods, it was too late. And of course they told us it was safe. Of course the FDA approved all this genetically modified stuff. The FDA has approved a lot of poisons. So when people say something is FDA approved, that doesn't mean anything. There's a whole lot of poison that's FDA approved. The FDA doesn't even do research like people think. They don't, okay? If you want to come out with a product, you submit it. So if you want to come out with a food product or a drug, you research your own product and you submit it to the FDA for approval. And really people pay the FDA for approval, but that's bias. That's like when the cops kill somebody, they're like, oh, we're gonna investigate ourselves. And we found that the cop is fine. But that's a bias. You need an outside organization to come in and do the research. This book, The Big Fat Surprise, Why Butter, Meat, and Cheese Belong in a Healthy Diet. Another book that's like 400 pages. There's a lot of reading, okay? I've been doing a lot of reading. Another book is like 400 pages, and she talks about how she felt like she was interviewing the damn mafia trying to get facts about all the suppressed information when it comes to telling people cholesterol is bad for them, red meat, animal fat is bad for them. Those are all lies too, okay? Of course, the food companies want you to think that, so you can take their medication, they can give you cholesterol lowering medication, which they now try to push it on kids. And kids need a lot of cholesterol when they're growing and developing. Then you have this book. Okay? Unreported truths about COVID-19 and lockdowns. Okay? And I also, so there's a lot of people writing about this. And so really, I'm just saying, it's time for people, the war on saturated fats, Israel. It's time for people to use their critical thinking skills. Now, it's time for those people who do know better, because some other people who got the vaccine, they didn't want it, but they didn't want to lose their job. But then guess what? They didn't know that they're going to have to get a booster shot every few months. Okay? When in the history of vaccines, well, except the flu vaccine, they give a new flu vaccine every year. And I've never taken the flu vaccine. I don't even get the flu. Okay? But to tell people that, so also when they say that people aren't vaccinated who are getting sick, okay, that's the other thing I wanted to say. I have a friend who was one of the lead scientists in developing the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, okay? He's been researching coronaviruses for like 8-9 years. He's a vaccine scientist. He's an MD, PhD. He's an infectious disease doctor. He's very pro-vaccine. And like, again, a lot of the doctors who I've been up close and personal with, doctors whose houses I've been to, I feel like they know nothing about health. The food that they eat is the worst, okay? And they think they're doing a good job with their diet soda and their low-fat milk, okay? All the doctors that I've been around have been that way. He's no different. So the thing is, but he told me, though, the vaccines were never meant to be given 2 weeks apart. They're supposed to be given months apart, a few months apart, okay? So I'm listening to some people from, talk about what's happening in Israel. Right now in Israel, you have plenty of people in the hospital with COVID. And Israel is like the most vaccinated nation in the world. Everybody in Israel has a vaccine. So if they're all vaccinated, why is everybody so sick in the hospital right now with COVID? And they said the UK had a similar vaccination, also a lot of vaccinations, but they didn't have that problem. So what's the difference? And the person said, oh, Israel did it on the correct schedule. They took the vaccine 2 weeks apart. But the UK had a shortage of vaccines in the spring, so a lot of people didn't get the second dose until months later. Well, my friend did tell me it was never meant to be taken 2 weeks apart to begin with. So you see, Israel did that, and look what happened. So, and the US did what Israel did, was on that 2-week thing. And if you only had one shot, then they don't consider you vaccinated. So if you get COVID and you only had one shot, they'll say you're an unvaccinated person who got COVID. And in some places, getting 2 shots doesn't mean that you're fully vaccinated. I was reading somewhere that fully vaccinated, a lot of places, means 3 shots. So if you had 2 shots and you're not fully vaccinated and you get COVID, they're going to say that you're an unvaccinated person who got COVID. When the truth of the matter is a whole bunch of vaccinated people that's being hospitalized for COVID. That's the truth. This propaganda that all these unvaccinated people, blah, blah, blah. I know a whole bunch of unvaccinated people. Ain't not near one of them sick, okay? So, there's that. Then the Johnson & Johnson's wasn't that effective. Now, in some of the research, they talk about how they're, like maybe, I still, me personally, I still wouldn't want the elderly to take it. But they're like, if anybody's supposed to take it, it should be the elderly. Okay? Not the young people, not the kids. Now they're trying to push it on people from 5 to 11. But the fact that New York City has this mandate. Where I'm from in New York City, I could be in Jersey in 5 minutes. I could be in Yonkers, which is not New York City. Yonkers is in Westchester County, which is a suburb of the Bronx. Yonkers is 15 minutes from me. Long Island, 25 minutes, which is connected to Queens and Brooklyn, but not a part of New York City. Connecticut, 20 minutes from me. All those places, they don't have a vaccine mandate. So it gives me hope that New Jersey, that the surrounding New York area, and that Connecticut never decided to adopt the mandates. So that says a lot. The fact that, you know, Chicago hasn't done it yet. I see that Chicago, there's some aldermen in Chicago that's suggesting it, but the police union in Chicago is totally against the vaccines. We see that the police in LA are now suing and bringing a lawsuit. A judge in New York yesterday just, you know, ended that mandate on the healthcare workers. So he said it couldn't be enforced. So there's strength in numbers, and that's giving me hope that they won't be fully successful with their little takeover of the world, okay? And let me see, let me grab this book too, hold on. A lot of you know this book, Medical Apartheid, okay? It's another like 400-page book. And this book talks about the history of what the medical industry has done to black people in this country. But it's not, this issue, not just a black issue. They don't care, okay? So I just had to go through some of these points. Now I'm trying to think, there may be some things that I didn't say that I remember later, but I'll channel those into other videos. I need to go focus on my Patreon page so I can get deeper into the science for those of you who care. If you learned something from this video, please share it and like it, share it. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and YouTube. Definitely make sure to follow my page, The Body Scientist 81. Definitely make sure to check out all these books. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 books that I've showed you guys in this video, okay? Yeah, 15 books that I've showed you guys in this video. So start reading something, okay? Some of you already probably know what's up, but for those of you who really got questions, read some books, okay? Go through the facts and the research. Use some critical thinking, but what we're being told is not true. A lot of numbers are being skewed. Also, one of the things Dr. Caxton talks about in the hydroxychloroquine debate book, he talks about how doctors were threatened and told not to give, the 16 books. Doctors were threatened and told not to treat the patients, right? Some of them, they would lose their license, okay? And they were told that. A lot of these doctors are being threatened. There are doctors who are afraid to write medical exemptions for people because they're saying that they'll be harassed. So that's the reason why a lot of doctors and nurses go along with it. Not everybody's built for that life to be trying to fight the system. They'd rather just live the easy life, or they just don't know any better. You know, you have both of those things. But the fact that, you know, the UK ended their vaccine passport, they're fighting in the street in France, but they won't show us that in the news. Because in France, they said you can't go to the supermarket and you can't get on the train if you don't have a vaccine passport. New York didn't go that far, you know. But something else I was going to say and I can't remember. Oh yeah, that Dr. Caxton was saying that in order for them to push the emergency use vaccine, in order for them to push it as emergency use and give it that criteria, then there had to be no other forms of treatment. So that's why they suppressed the vitamin C, the hydroxychloroquine and the zinc, the ivermectin. You know, they suppressed all of that because if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to push the vaccine for emergency use, okay? So it's just ridiculous. We already know with medicine, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So to say that everybody, that the vaccine is the only way to protect you and everybody needs to be vaccinated. And then they want to say that if you don't want to take the vaccine, you can't get a hospital bed. I'm fine with that. I'll sign up for that. I'm not afraid of COVID. I know how to take care of myself. I know my immune system is strong. I know I've been protecting my microbiome my whole entire adult life. I know what my vitamin D levels are, and I monitor them, and I go out of my way to make sure my vitamin D levels are up to par. And that was before this COVID situation. And it's not just vitamin D, it's vitamin A. And you don't want to take vitamin D by itself. But I'm not going to get into that now because I have other videos where I talk about that. So if you check out the videos on my page, The Body Scientist 81, you will find that. I'll try to post some of them below. I'm going to say dig deeper. If you learned something from this video, please watch other videos. Please share it. Please like it. If you don't want the vaccine, I stay strong because there's strength in numbers. And I know people who have gotten it and they regret it because they're like, what? I would take a third shot and a fourth shot? They didn't tell me this. I didn't sign up for this. And there's people who are getting mad about that. And if you want to take the vaccine, more power to you. Okay? But to be acting like, the people that didn't take the vaccine, oh, you're dirty, filthy people and you're spreading disease, blah, 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 blah. That's a whole bunch of propaganda and nonsense. Let's deal with the facts. Let's deal with the real. Let's critically think, okay? Because there's something that people are definitely lacking. And I'm going to end it with this, all right? So have a good day, people. Thank you for listening. If you learned something, share the video. Check out some of the books that I recommended and stay healthy, okay? Bye.